Today I'm going to discuss the most important chapter, Unit 60, Lambo to the Slaughter by the Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl was born on the 13th September 1916 and a British novelist, short story writer, also a screenwriter. His books have sold more than 250 million copies worldwide. Lambo to the Slaughter is a 1945 short story by the Roald Dahl. It was rejected along with the four other stories, for example, the New Yorker, which was published in the Hyper magazine in September 1953. It was adapted for an episode. Alfred Hitchcock presents. So, in these two paragraphs, we comes to know that how the Roald Dahl was born on the 13th September 1916 and a British novelist, short story writer, also a screenwriter and also a screenwriter. His books have sold more than 250 million copies worldwide. Lambo to the Slaughter is a 1954 short story by the Roald Dahl. It was rejected along with the four other stories, for example, The New Yorker, which was published in the Hyper magazine in September 1953. It was adapted for an episode. Alfred Hitchcock presents. Lambo to the Slaughter demonstrates Dahl's fascination with horror, which seen in both his adult fictions and his stories for children. The story was suggested to Dahl by his friend Ian Fleming. So, Lamb to the Slaughter is a demonstrated Dahl fascination with horror, which is seen in both his adult fictions and his stories for children. The stories was suggested to Dahl by his friend Ian Fleming. In this story, there was a woman named as a Mary Maloney. She was pregnant and waiting for her husband. Patrick was returned from his job, who was an police officer. When he returned, Mary noticed he was uncharacteristically aloof. Patrick asked for divorce from his wife, Mary Maloney. Patrick was trying to convince her for divorce and make her sure for the care and support from his side with the money and other facilities. So in this paragraph, we comes to know that how the story is begin. In the story, there is a lady which named as a Mary Maloney, and her husband name is Patrick. So uh, Mary Maloney as a typical housewife waiting for her husband, and when he was returned to the home from the job as a police officer, um, he uh, he make a drink, and after the drink he asked her to his typical housewife Mary Maloney for the divorce. Um, Either she is waiting for desperately for her husband, and the husband is taking a drink of a glass after coming home, and asked her for divorce and make her sure he will give him all the facilities with money and all that things, and after the divorce, and try to convince her, and how the Mary Maloney act after that, and how the stories goes on, we are going to discuss it. Seemingly in the trance, Mary fetches a large leg of lamb from the deep freezer in the cellar to cook for their dinner. Patrick was in anger and asked her to not to make an dinner for him, and as he want to go outside. While he was looking outside from the window, Mary suddenly came and struck Patrick in the back of the head with the frozen leg of lamb and killed him instantly. So, seemingly, seemingly in trance, Mary fetches a large leg of lamb, ठीक है, from the deep freezer in the cellar to cook for their dinner. So now she is going to prepare something and some meat for her husband, and her husband asked her in anger not to make any kind of a food for dinner, as he want to go outside. While he was looking outside from the window, Mary suddenly came and struck Patrick in the back of head. So while he is watching outside and looking outside the window, and Mary Maloney suddenly came and struck back um, of the head with the frozen leg of the lamb and killed him instantly. So, just because of the decision and just because of the anger she have, as she is following all the rule regulation of a typical housewife, and despite of that, her husband decided that to give her divorce, and just because of this kind of a anger, this kind of a uh, uh, daily routine she have as a housewife, and suddenly her husband asked her for a divorce and all that thing. She take a lamb, meat of lamb and leg of lamb, and hit the backside of his head and killed him instantly. Mary realizes that her husband Patrick was dead at the moment. She was frightened and started thinking about her unborn child. So, at the beginning of the story, we have already discussed about it. She is a pregnant lady, and she is now going to deliver a baby, and she think about her and his future, and that's why she think about it, and she decided to cover up the murder. She prepares the leg of lamb, places it in the oven to destroy the evidence. So, just because of that, she wants to live a normal life, and she wants to um, clear all the evidence. She put the meat in the oven. She decided to cover up the murder. She prepared the leg of lamb, placed it in the oven to destroy the evidence. She was trying to make herself normal from the practice and remove all the evidence of the murder. After the practice of cheerful Max, she visited the grocer and started chanting with him what she should prepare for the Patrick dinner. After returning to the house and entered to the room where her husband lay dead on the floor, she acted surprised and started crying at the moment. So, after Patrick, after practice of the cheerful mugs, so now she wants to look normal for the outsider and the other person, because she wants to live a normal life with her upcoming baby, and she is practice for the cheerful marks. ठीक है? As she visited the grocer and started chanting with him what she should prepare for the dinner. Patrick's dinner, and after turned to the house and turned to the room where her husband lay dead on the floor. She acted surprised and started crying at the moment. So now she is going to act like a wife who suddenly see a dead body of her husband on the floor, and she practices and show her normal, and as she visited the grocer and asking and chanting with him what should she what kind of a food she should make for the Patrick's dinner and all that things. When the police arrives, they ask lot of questions from the Mary and look at the scene. After considering Mary's suspicion, police comes to the conclusion that he was killed by an intruder with a large blunt object and made of metal. As the policemen search the weapon, Mary offers them whiskey and tries to distract them from the search of weapon and evidence. When the police arrives, they ask lots of questions from the Mary and look at the scene. So this kind of a scene, this kind of situation is here. Came, police is coming here and asked lots of questions from the Mary Maloney. After considering Mary's suspicion, police comes to the conclusion that he was killed by an intruder with a large blunt object and made of metal. ठीक है? As the policeman searches the weapon, Mary offers them the whiskey, ठीक है, and try to distract them. So now she is trying to distract all the policemen are there and searching for all the this kind of evidence and all that thing. And from the search of weapon and evidence. After the fruitless search of the weapon around the house, Mary offers them dinner. They hesitate but accept it at the end as the meat will be waste otherwise. So Mary just asks the police officers for the dinner because the dinner hour is going on while they are searching the weapon and evidence. So this kind of things is here, and Mary sits nearby them and did not join them as she knew they the meat was served. It was the murder weapon of her husband. So Mary sits nearby them but did not join them as she knew they uh, the the meat was served. It was the murder weapon of her husband. During the dinner of the all the police men were discussing about the murder weapon and their mouths full of meat of lamb. So while they are discussing about the weapon, evidence, and all the things, their mouths are full of meats and of lamb, which is the weapon of her husband mother. One of the one of them saying that it probably right under our noses. Mary was hearing hearing their discussion and giggle quietly. So Mary just sitting nearby them and hearing their discussion about her husband mother and while she listening this kind of things like policemen are searching the weapons and they assumes that it should be uh, under their nose and right here now in the room and she just quite and giggle in herself. ठीक है? And the conclusion of the story is that through the story, we can come to the conclusion that overall Rack causes Dell characters to full transform throughout the story. The practic Rack at his wife turns him sullen and uncaring. ठीक है? And the Mary's Rack at her husband transform her from a doting mother to be into a murderer capable and sociopathic calm which who ended up fooling police. ठीक है? So this kind of a conclusion is here how the story is going on. मतलब at the beginning of the story Mary is a typical housewife who desperately waiting for her husband and when he asked for divorce from her. She, as she is pregnant and playing a typical wife role, she brings after. Listening after listening the proposal and after the this kind of a co- mm, questions and asked by her husband, she becomes sullen and uncaring because because Mary's rag at her husband transformed her from a doting mother to be into a murderer capable. ठीक है क्योंकि because she is going to be a mother and वो she is becomes enough capable to kill her husband and just because of her marry rag at her husband. ठीक है which transform her mother mother to be into a murderer capable and sociopathic calm who end up fooling police. So suddenly she becomes very strong and enough capable to murder her husband because she is going to be a mother and her husband asked this kind of nonsense questions to her and as she is playing a typical wife role and either and despite of all these things her husband is ready to get is ready to give her divorce and all and asked for this kind of things and that's why this kind of a conversation this kind of a questions make her enough capable to to be a murderer and enough capable and and sociopathic calm who end up with a fooling police. ठीक है तो so now we have some important questions about the chapter is that what details tell you that Mary Maloney is a typical and happy married housewife? ठीक है so first of all you have to you write your answer in the same structure. First of all you have to give the introduction. Roald Dahl was born on the 13th September 1916 and a British novelist, short story writer, and also a screenwriter. His books have sold more than 250 million copies worldwide. Lamb to the Slaughter is a 1950 short story by the Roald Dahl and it was rejected along with the four other stories, for example, The New Yorker, which was published in the Hyper magazine in September 1953 and it was adapted from for an episode Alfred Hitchcock presents. Lamb to the Slaughter demonstrated Dahl's fascination with the horror which seen in the both his adult fictions and his stories for children. The story was suggested to the Dell by his friend Land Fleming. ठीक है uh, in the story, there was a woman named as a Mary Maloney, and she was pregnant and waiting for her husband. And Patrick was returning from his job, who was a police officer. When he returned, Mary Maloney noticed that he was uncharacteristically aloof. Patrick asked for divorce from his wife, Mary Maloney, and Patrick was trying to convince her for divorce and make her sure for the care and support from his side with the money and other facilities. Seemingly in the trance, Mary fetches a large leg of lamb from the deep freezer in the cellar to cook for their dinner. Patrick was in the anger and asked her to not to make an dinner for make an dinner for him and as he wanted to go to the outside while he was looking outside from the window, Mary suddenly came and struck Patrick in the back at the head of with the frozen leg and you have to rewrite all this kind of things and how she becomes a murderer uh, from the uh, from the typical housewife. ठीक है and how the Mary realizes that her husband Patrick was dead at the moment and she pregnant and started thinking about her unborn child. She decided to cover up the murder as she wants to live with her child um, in a normal way and in a normal life. That's why she decided to cover up the murder and she prepared the leg of lamb, placed it in the oven to destroy the evidence. She was trying to make her normal from the practice and remove all the evidence of the murder. So, this kind of things, whatever is going on at the situations, and how she cleared the evidence, and how she make fool policemen and who are searching evidence and weapon in her house, okay, in everywhere around her house. And when the policemen arrived, they asked lots of questions from the Mary and Lord and look at the scene. And after consider Mary's suspicion, police comes to the conclusion that he was killed by an intruder with a large blunt object and made of metal. As the policeman searched the weapon, Mary offers them whiskey and try to distract them from the search of weapon and evidence. ठीक है? And after the fruitless search of weapon around the house, Mary offers them dinner and they hesitate but accept it at the end as the meat will be waste otherwise. Mary sits nearby them but did not join them as she knew they the meat was served. It was the murder weapon of her husband. During the dinner, all the policemen were discussing about the murder weapon and their mother and their mouth full of meat of lamb, and one of them saying that it probably right into our nose. And Mary was hearing their discussion and giggled quietly. So this kind of a situation and this kind of a discussion in between the policemen while they are searching for the murder evidence and weapons, and how the Mary is giggle quietly nearby them. So this kind of a situation and this kind of scene at here scene at the house, and through the conclusion we comes to know that how the Mary rag at her husband make her enough capable to be a murderer before before to be a mother. ठीक है? And how she becomes so sociopathic, how she becomes so sociopathic, calm, and who end up fooling police. ठीक है? This kind of a discussion we have, and you have to write your answer in your same structure, otherwise you will deduct your marks. And what do you think Patrick Maloney told his wife that promote her to kill him? So as we have already discussed about the whole the situation, now I'm going to discuss the main answer of the question, but you have to follow the same structure. You have to write all these things because your questions are coming for the like 10 marks questions, and you have to write all the things. In this story, there was a woman named as a Mary Maloney. She was pregnant and waiting for her husband. Patrick was returned from his job, and who was a police officer. When he returned, Mary noticed he was uncharacteristically affluent, and Patrick asked um, for divorce from his wife, Mary Maloney. So this is the main answer of the story, and which um make her enough capable and make her enough um, which make promote to her to kill him. ठीक है? I hope you like this video, which is very important according to your examination point of view, and you have to write your answer in your same structure, and for you don't um, don't try to escape any kind of a point, as I have explained in your answer, and otherwise you will deduct your marks, and the question will be come in your examination about a 10 marks question. You have to write all the things. You can't deduct and escape any kind of a point. If you did, your answer will be incomplete. ठीक है? I hope you like this video. Thank you so much.